With you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. And now here's Matt.
Meredith, thank you. Newt Gingrich was the Republican Speaker of the House who led the successful fight against the Clinton administration's health care reform plan. He's also the founder of the for-profit Center for Health Transformation, and he's out with a new documentary, Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny. Newt, good morning. Your introduction gets longer every time we have you on the show. It's nice to see you. Hey, let me start with a question to you that Meredith just asked to Melody, and that is, does President Obama need the Republicans to get this health care reform passed?
Probably, because I think this is a much different proposition than dealing with a stimulus package, which after all was spending money. I mean, if you can barely get $780 billion in spending through on a party line vote, trying to come back and have this kind of change purely among Democrats, I think would be virtually impossible. But there's a deeper reason, and I frankly like the way President Obama seems to be approaching this issue, which is very different from how he approached the spending bill. If he's really open to ideas, for example, Jim Froeg at our Center for Health Transformation is developing a book for this summer on fraud in Medicare and Medicaid. Jim estimates that we have between $85 and $120 billion a year in fraud. I mean, outright basically theft in Medicare and Medicaid.
And not to cut you off, but you think that can fund the program and fund the reform as opposed to it coming from higher taxes on the wealthy?
Sure. I mean, why not take it from the crooks rather than take it from working Americans? But let me give two more examples. We have an Alzheimer's study group, which Bob Kerrey and I co-chair in a bipartisan way. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor is on it. We'll report at the end of this month in a study a very bold set of ideas, which will be worth literally trillions of dollars over the next generation.
Right.
And a lot of pain that will be saved. It requires some changes in the Budget Act to have more research earlier.
Well, if you like the approach, is it going to work? Do you think this can pass this time around, given the deep divisions in Congress right now and the money that's being spent on all these other plans?
Look, the president talked a lot about bipartisanship and then backed off and allowed Speaker Pelosi and Chairman Obie to write a totally partisan stimulus bill with zero Republican input. If the president actually insists on a bipartisan process, and if he's genuinely open to new ideas and new approaches, I think he could get an extraordinary achievement which would help average Americans have health coverage in a way that did not put power in the bureaucracy, but actually put power back with citizens and doctors. I think the key is, are they really willing to listen, or is that just a charade behind which they already have a plan they're going to pass that will be unacceptable to most Americans?
Let me move on, Newt, and ask you about some other things. There's been a lot of talk in the last week or so about who's leading the Republican Party right now. It seems the White House would like to say it's Rush Limbaugh. Do you like that strategy, first of all?
I think it reminds me of the Nixon White House, and I think that as long as Rahm Emanuel's there, he's sort of the Haldeman of this administration. Look, it's a nice gimmick to avoid talking about 8,000 set-asides in a bill, which even two Democratic senators have now called on the president to veto. It's a nice gimmick to avoid talking about an energy tax increase, which will hit every senior citizen in the country with higher electric bills. It's a nice gimmick to avoid talking about a tax increase on everybody above $250,000.
You say it's a good way to kind of divert attention away
Sure.
from these things. It reminds you of the Nixon White House. Does it remind you at all of 1994 when then advisor to the Clintons, Dick Morris, decided that, there was nothing bad to say about Bob Dole and Jack Kemp, so they made it a referendum against Newt Gingrich?
Listen, they made a referendum against me, and for the first time in 40 years we took the House, and they then kept attacking me, and in 1996, for the first time since 1928, we kept the House, and if you remember, we kept the House for 12 years. I'd be perfectly happy if this particular tactic blows up as badly as that did, and we ended up with John Boehner as Speaker after the next election.
Let me hold up this last weekend's cover of the New York Times Magazine section. You're on the cover there, and it says the anti-Obama. Are you the new face of the Republican Party? Do you want that?
No, look, I think Bobby Jindal's part of that. I think Paul Ryan's part of that. Eric Cantor's part of that. Michael Steele's part of that. Sarah Palin is part of that. There are 50 new faces of the Republican Party, and I think we're going to be very vibrant over the next year and have an amazing number of new ideas, including the various solutions group that John Boehner is starting to appoint in the House, and the work that Mitch McConnell and John Kyle and Lamar Alexander are doing in the Senate. This is going to be a very dynamic party offering better solutions, not being an opposition party, but trying to find ways to create a much better future for the country.
Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Newt, nice to see you. Thanks.
And now let's get a check of the rest of the morning's top stories.